Beggar, she never imagined he would one day look her straight in the eyes and say, "Child, I'm a billionaire." Those words didn't fit the man she knew, the frail stranger in a wheelchair who sat alone at the edge of Pike Place Market, the man everyone else ignored. But the truth didn't come quickly. It came after months of quiet kindness, whispered confessions, and a moment so shocking it changed the course of her young life forever. Lily was only 10, but she carried herself with the seriousness of someone who had learned early that life doesn't wait for you to grow up. Every morning, while the rest of Seattle rushed through its routines, she slipped out of the small apartment she shared with her sick mother, carrying a tin lunchbox filled with the food she had cooked before sunrise. It wasn't much rice potatoes, sometimes a small piece of chicken when she could afford it, but it kept the two of them alive. And it kept her mother's medicine cabinet from going empty for another day. The old beggar appeared long before most vendors opened their stalls. He sat beneath the same cracked lamppost, his wheelchair old enough to groan whenever he shifted his weight. Some days he stared blankly at the passing crowds. Other days he hung his head so low, Lily wondered if he was still breathing. People stepped around him like he was trash on the sidewalk. A few whispered hopeless case under their breath. Someone once flicked a quarter toward him as if tossing scraps to a dog. Lily saw it all, and each time the shame rose hot in her chest. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, to have people assume things about you without knowing the first detail of your story. So, on a cold gray morning when the wind stung her cheeks, she walked up to him and set her lunchbox on his lap. He didn't look at her at first. Only when she stepped back did he glance up, eyes pale and tired, as if he hadn't heard someone speak to him kindly in years. She smiled and said, "It's warm. You should eat it while it still helps." From that day on, feeding him wasn't a choice. It became instinct. Every afternoon after school, she returned to the same bench. Sometimes she had enough for a full meal, sometimes only a half portion, but she always brought something. The old man never asked. He simply accepted each offering with a slight nod, a silent agreement between two people who had nothing except the ability to give. Her mother noticed her coming home hungry. "Lily, sweetheart," she asked one night, voice thin from pain, "are you skipping meals again?" Lily answered softly, "I'm okay, Mom. Someone out there needs it more." Her mother didn't scold her, just pulled her close with fragile arms and whispered, "Your heart is too big for this world, but kindness often looks foolish to those who don't understand it." A group of teenagers saw her feeding the old man one afternoon and shouted from across the street, "Why waste food on him? He's not worth it." Lily didn't look their way. She simply placed her scarf around his shoulders when the wind turned blistering. The man's fingers twitched, hesitating before gripping the fabric as if he wasn't sure he deserved warmth. He didn't speak, not for weeks. That silence became part of the rhythm of her days. Quiet giving, quiet receiving, quiet understanding. Then, one afternoon, something shifted. She brought him a bowl of soup sealed inside a thermos she borrowed from a neighbor. As she set it down, he touched her hand gently, almost fearfully. "Little girl." His voice cracked like it hadn't been used in years. "Why do you share with someone who gives you nothing back?" She blinked, surprised. He finally spoke. "Because you're not—" "Nothing," she said. The man closed his eyes as if the words stung or healed. The real shock came 2 days later. The rain had poured all morning, leaving the market half empty. Lily ran toward the bench with her jacket pulled over her head, but as she arrived, she found the old man slumped forward, shaking violently. She screamed for help until her throat burned. Vendors rushed over. Someone called 911. While she held his trembling hand, a metallic object slipped out of his coat pocket, a sleek engraved card marked with the name of a high-profile international bank. It gleamed strangely out of place in his worn clothing. When the paramedics lifted him into the ambulance, he suddenly grabbed Lily's wrist with a strength she didn't know he had. His eyes were clear for the first time since she met him. "Find me," he whispered. "Top floor, Four Seasons Hotel. Tell them Benjamin sent you." Lily froze. Benjamin. She had never heard his name before, and the Four Seasons wasn't a place someone like her ever existed. She watched the ambulance speed away, the siren fading into the wet streets. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Something about his voice, the urgency in his grip, the mystery of that metal card, it all pointed to a truth far bigger than anything she imagined. As the rain soaked through her shoes, she whispered to herself, "Who are you?" But deep down, she sensed the answer waiting behind those hotel doors, an answer that would shake her world. The poor old beggar she fed every day was living a life no one could see, and one she was about to step right into. Lily had never stepped inside a place as grand as the Four Seasons Hotel. From the street, the building felt like something out of another world. Glass gleaming against the gray Seattle sky, polished brass doors, opening to people who looked like they belonged anywhere except the cramped apartment she came from. But she held the metal card tight in her hand, the one that had slipped from the old man's coat, and repeated his words to herself like a secret prayer. Top floor. Tell them Benjamin sent you. She didn't know if she was more frightened of going in or walking away. After school, she rode the bus across town with the card tucked in her jacket pocket. Her legs shook the entire ride. She worried about her mother home alone, about missing the dinner rush at the market, but something inside her insisted she couldn't ignore the old man's last plea. If he had trusted her with that message, she owed it to him to follow through. The moment she stepped into the hotel lobby, the warmth hit her like a wave. Soft piano music drifted across the air. The smell of polished wood and fresh-cut flowers filled the space. But what struck her most were the looks. People glanced at her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. A child without luggage, without an adult, without any reason to be there except the truth no one would believe. She approached the front desk quietly. The concierge, a tall man with a perfect tie and perfect posture, gave her a practiced smile. "Can I help you, sweetheart? Are you lost?" Lily swallowed hard. "Someone told me to come here," she said. "To the top floor." He raised a brow. "And who might that be?" She placed the engraved card on the counter. "Benjamin." The man's expression changed instantly. His polite smile faded. He picked up the card, studied it closely, then leaned in. "Where did you get this?" Lily hesitated, afraid she might cause trouble. "From him," she whispered, "the man in the wheelchair outside Pike Place. He told me to find him here." The concierge froze for a split second, then motioned to a security guard. Lily's heart raced, ready to bolt, until the concierge spoke again, his tone now cautious rather than dismissive. "Follow me." They guided her to a private elevator tucked behind an ornate hallway. The guard inserted a key card, and the doors slid open silently. As they ascended, Lily watched the numbers climb higher than she ever imagined she'd go. The guard glanced at her. "You must be someone special," he said gently. "No one goes up there without his personal approval." Her breath caught his approval. The ragged man eating from her lunchbox. None of it made sense. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a quiet, carpeted hallway. A woman in a navy suit met her and led her to a suite at the very end. Before she could knock, the woman opened the door. Lily stepped inside and froze. The old man, Benjamin, was sitting upright in a modern wheelchair, clean-shaven hair, neatly combed, wearing a fresh dress shirt that made him almost unrecognizable. Doctors stood around him. A nurse adjusted an IV bag. A man with a tablet murmured updates. This wasn't a beggar. This wasn't even someone poor. This was someone surrounded by resources, by influence, by authority. Benjamin saw her and lifted a hand weakly. "Lily, you came." The room fell silent as she rushed to his side. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. His eyes softened. "I am now." She glanced between him and the doctor's, confusion rising like a knot in her throat. "Why are you here, I thought? I thought you lived on the street." He nodded slowly. "I did, but not because I had no home. I chose to be there." The words didn't make sense. She stared at him, trying to grasp the gap between the man she knew and the man in front of her. "My real name is Benjamin Wells," he said. "Years ago, I founded one of the biggest tech firms on the West Coast. I lived an extravagant life, private jets, penthouses, rooms like this one in every major city. I was surrounded by people who only pretended to care, and for a long time I didn't know the difference." He paused as a doctor checked his pulse. His voice was steadier when he continued. "But success," he said, "can be a very quiet kind of loneliness. And when tragedy struck my family, all the wealth in the world became meaningless. I walked away from the company, from the lifestyle, from everyone who said they loved me but loved what I could give them more." Lily's chest tightened. She thought of her mother, of quiet nights listening to her struggle to breathe. "I needed to know," Benjamin said softly, "if there was still real kindness left in the world. The kind that asks for nothing, expects nothing. So I went where kindness is rare, where people look away. I disappeared." Lily looked into his face, the same tired eyes, the same fragile frame, but surrounded now by the unmistakable signs of privilege. She felt dizzy. He reached for her hand, his grip weak but deliberate. "For months, child, not one person stopped to help me. Not one, until you." She stepped closer, her voice wavering. "I didn't do anything special." "You looked hungry. You fed me," he said. "But you gave me more than food. You gave me the one thing I thought I'd lost forever, faith in people." The room fell quiet again, except for the subtle hum of medical machines. "There is something else," he said. "Someone tried to take everything from me after I left. Money attracts vultures. There are people who want me gone legally, financially, even physically." He lowered his voice. "And I've been preparing to expose them. But I needed someone pure, someone untouched by greed or ambition to witness the truth for what it is." Lily shook her head. "Why me? I'm just a kid." Benjamin smiled faintly. "Exactly. Children see with clarity, adults often lose." A doctor cleared his throat and asked Benjamin to rest, but he refused until he finished. "I want to help your mother," he said. "I can get her the best care in the city, and I want you to stay close to me for now. You've done more for me than anyone in decades." Lily felt her heartbeat quicken, not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of everything he revealed. The man she fed on the street wasn't just lonely or forgotten. He was wealthy. He was hunted. He was rebuilding his life from ashes, and somehow she had become the one person he trusted to stand beside him. She tightened her grip on his hand, steadying him as much as herself. In that quiet penthouse with the skyline stretching across the windows, she realized her life had just shifted in a direction she never expected. Not because of fortune, not because of power, but because of a fragile truth she stumbled into through a single act of kindness. Benjamin's recovery moved slowly, but each day he grew more alert, more aware, and more determined to rebuild the life he had once abandoned. For Lily, the transformation didn't come from the luxurious hotel suites or the polished floors she now walked across like they were part of some dream she didn't ask for. It came from the subtle shifts, the way Benjamin sat straighter, the way his voice regained strength, the way people around him began to react to the presence of a child He introduced only with one sentence. "She is the reason I'm alive." True to his promise, the very next morning, Benjamin arranged full medical support for Lily's mother. Within hours, doctors visited her apartment. New medications were delivered. A nurse came by twice a day. For the first time in years, Lily saw hope replace the exhaustion in her mother's eyes. Her mother kept asking how all of this was possible, but Lily simply said, "A friend is helping us." She wasn't ready to say more. Even the truth felt too big to speak aloud. Benjamin's suite became a second home for her after school. The private penthouse no longer scared her. Instead, it became a strange kind of sanctuary. While Benjamin held meetings with doctors and lawyers, Lily sat at a corner table doing homework, sipping hot chocolate brought by the staff who now treated her with gentle respect. But she wasn't just an observer. Benjamin insisted on teaching her everything he could. "You shouldn't grow up thinking the world is small," he told her. "You've already proven yours is bigger than most adults can see." He taught her how to understand people, how to read their intentions, how to listen beyond their words, how to see what they were afraid to show. He explained deals, ethics, trust, and the weight of power. Sometimes he rolled his wheelchair beside her while she read aloud from books he used to teach his own employees about leadership. Other times he simply asked questions about her day, her mother, her fears. "You're allowed to dream now," he told her one afternoon, as the Seattle skyline glowed orange through the window. "And dreaming isn't selfish, Lily. It's necessary." But not everyone welcomed the changes. His former attorney, a stern woman named Evelyn Price, visited him to review legal documents. She eyed Lily with open suspicion. "You're involving a child in decisions of this magnitude," she questioned. Benjamin didn't flinch. "She may be the only person at this table who has nothing to gain by lying to me." Evelyn frowned, but she didn't argue further. His loyal bodyguard, Marcus Hale, however, showed quiet approval. A tall man with a calm voice, he treated Lily kindly and often reminded her to keep her distance from journalists who were beginning to sniff around the hotel. "People will say anything when they think there's a story," he warned. "Protect yourself." Soon enough, Benjamin's presence at the Four Seasons became harder to conceal. Rumors spread. A reclusive billionaire resurfacing after years in hiding was news on its own, but whispers about a mysterious little girl visiting him daily fueled even more curiosity. Phones appeared when Lily passed through the lobby. Strangers whispered her name, though they didn't know who she was. Online posts talked about the little girl with the billionaire spinning stories that twisted her kindness into something suspicious. One evening, she sat beside Benjamin while he reviewed documents on his desk. His breathing was heavier than usual, his hand shaking slightly as he held a pen. She reached out and covered his hand with hers. "You should rest," she said. "I will, soon," he replied, though his eyes stayed on the papers. "But first, I need to finalize something." He signed the last page, then slid the folder toward her. "It's time you saw what you've helped me rebuild." Inside were documents forming the Wells Carter Foundation, named after both of them. It was designed to provide medical support for low-income families, particularly single parents, fighting illnesses they couldn't afford to treat. Her mother was no longer just a patient receiving charity. She was part of a mission that would help thousands. Lily looked up with wide eyes. "You named it after me, you earned it," he said simply. "And someday you'll lead it." Her throat tightened. "I don't know anything about running, anything." He smiled gently. "That's why I'm teaching you. Kindness is a skill too, Lily, and you practice it better than anyone I've known." She didn't notice the color draining from his face until his voice faltered. He reached for a glass of water, but missed knocking it to the floor. Marcus rushed in immediately, calling for the medical team. Benjamin slumped back, exhaustion weighing down his features. Stay with him, Marcus said firmly as nurses hurried in. Lily stayed by his side holding his hand as the doctors checked his vitals. He opened his eyes again after several minutes and turned his head toward her. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "I'm not," she said, though. Her hand shook. He lifted her hand closer to his chest. "Everything I'm building, everything I'm restoring, it's for people like you, for families like yours. I can't let my life end before I finish what I started." "You will finish," she insisted. "I know you will." His eyes softened. "If anything happens to me, remember this. Wealth can disappear, power can crumble, but the kindness that saved me will outlive us both." The room hummed with medical equipment, but Lily heard only his words. It struck her then that her role in Benjamin's world was no longer just about meals or companionship. She was becoming a witness, a learner, a guardian of something far bigger than herself. And as she stood beside his bed, watching him fight to reclaim the life he had abandoned, she sensed that her own world was expanding in ways she never imagined. Not because of money or status, but because of the responsibility he had placed in her hands, a responsibility born from one simple act of kindness that had transformed them both. The morning of the announcement felt unreal from the moment Lily stepped out of the car. Reporters crowded outside the Seattle Convention Center, cameras, flashing voices rising in a chaotic chorus. Until that moment, she had only seen crowds like this on television, faces pressed, close microphones thrust forward, the air buzzing with expectation. She clutched Marcus Hale's hand as they guided her toward a private entrance. He leaned down and whispered, "Just breathe, kid. You're safe. He wants you here." Inside, the air was cooler, calmer, but the tension hung heavy. Staff hurried back and forth with clipboards. Technicians adjusted microphones. Evelyn Price stood near the stage speaking firmly into her phone as she scanned a stack of legal documents. She nodded at Lily but didn't smile. It wasn't her nature. Today was about control precision and protecting Benjamin Wells from the storm waiting outside. Lily glanced toward the side of the stage where Benjamin sat in his wheelchair. He wore a dark suit tailored perfectly to his frail frame. His hair was combed neatly, his breathing steady but slow. When he saw her, he lifted a hand and motioned for her to come closer. She approached, and he laid his fingers lightly on hers. "You look nervous," he said, voice raspy but warm. "I'm more scared than nervous," she admitted. He chuckled. "Good, it means you understand the weight of what we're doing. But remember, you're not here because of fear. You're here because of truth." She nodded, though the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. A staff member rushed over. "Mr. Wells, we're ready whenever you are." Benjamin exhaled deeply, then looked at Lily. "Stay beside me, no matter what is asked, no matter who stares. You stay right here." She tightened her grip on his hand. "I will." When the stage doors opened, the noise hit like a wave. The room was filled wall to wall, journalists, industry leaders, former associates, skeptics, supporters. All of them stood the moment Benjamin appeared. For years, people believed he had vanished or died. To see him alive again sent a visible shock through the room. Benjamin rolled toward the podium, Lily walking beside him. Cameras surged forward. A hush fell when he reached the microphone. He took a moment to situate himself, breathing carefully. Then he began. "Thank you for being here today. I know many of you expected answers about where I've been, why I disappeared, and why I chose this moment to return. I will give you those answers. But first, there is someone you need to meet." He turned to Lily and extended his hand. She stepped forward cautiously, the lights making her blink. "This," he continued, "is Lily Carter. She is the reason I'm standing before you today." The crowd reacted instantly. Photographers lifted their cameras. Whispering rippled across the room. Some faces softened with curiosity. Others narrowed with suspicion. Benjamin continued. For months, I lived anonymously on the streets of Seattle. Not because I was destitute, but because I had lost faith in the world I once built my life around. I needed to know whether human kindness still existed without wealth attached to it. Most people walked by, some turned their backs. But this child stopped. He paused, emotion tightening his voice. She fed me. Every day, she gave what little she had to a man she believed had nothing. Lily looked at him, suddenly aware that the entire room had turned their attention to her. Her cheeks warmed, but she stood tall, remembering his request. She didn't know my name. She didn't know my story. She didn't know that I once ran one of the biggest tech companies on the West Coast. She didn't know that powerful people had tried to take advantage of my absence. She didn't care. She saw a human being and refused to let me disappear. He unfolded a paper on the podium and laid it flat. Today, I'm returning to the public eye for 2 reasons. First, to expose those who profited from my disappearance and attempted to declare me legally incapacitated in order to seize control of my assets. Second, to announce a new chapter. The screens behind him flickered to life, showing the logo, Wells Carter Foundation. This foundation will provide medical support, emergency aid, and long-term resources for families who face illness with more courage than means. Lily and her mother will not be the last family we lift. They will be the first. Gasps spread across the room. The name Carter shone beside Wells in bold letters. A reporter raised her voice. "Mr. Wells, why name a child as co-founder?" Benjamin looked at Lily with unwavering confidence. "Because she is the only person I have met in decades who understood generosity without calculation. She reminded me of the world I stopped believing in." Another voice called out, "Mr. Wells, are you certain she's capable of being involved in something of this scale?" He leaned forward, gripping the podium. Kindness is not a skill you learn in boardrooms. It is not acquired through education or connections. It is lived, and this girl has lived it in a way that restored me. Lily felt a lump rise in her throat. She didn't know how to speak to a crowd like this. Nothing in her life prepared her for it. Yet Benjamin's grip on her hand anchored her. She stepped up to the microphone. "I don't know much about business," she said softly, "and I don't know why someone like me ended up here. But I know what it feels like to be scared and need help. My mom is sick. Some days, I didn't know if we'd make it, and the only thing I could give was food to someone who looked even lonelier than I felt. I didn't know he was important. I didn't know anything. I just knew he was hungry." The room fell completely silent. "And if I could help one person," she continued, "then maybe this foundation can help thousands." She stepped back, trembling, but Benjamin squeezed her hand with pride. Cameras flashed. Reporters scrambled for angles. But something deeper settled in the room, an understanding that they weren't witnessing a publicity stunt or a corporate maneuver. They were witnessing the rebirth of a man through the compassion of a child. Benjamin lifted her hand to the air, a symbolic gesture that echoed across every lens and every reporter's pen. "For years," he said, "I hid from the world. Today, I'm choosing to rejoin it, not because of wealth or legacy, but because a 10-year-old girl showed me the only kind of riches worth keeping." The crowd began to applaud, slowly at first, then rising into a standing ovation. Lily turned toward Benjamin, her eyes shining, and for the first time since they met under that cracked lamppost at Pike Place, she saw him not as a man who had been lost, but as one finally found. In the months that followed the public announcement, life shifted into a calm, steady rhythm Lily had never known before. Her mother's health improved with proper treatment. Their apartment, once filled with worry, became a place of slower mornings, warm meals, and quiet laughter. Lily still visited Benjamin at the Four Seasons every day after school, but now their conversations stretched beyond lessons and legal documents. They talked about books, music he loved from decades past, the restaurants he used to visit, and the childhood she was still growing into. He told her stories about the early days of his company, long nights, impossible dreams, victories that felt small until they changed the world. She listened, like every word mattered, because to her they did. The Wells Carter Foundation grew faster than anyone predicted. Donations poured in from across the country. Families wrote letters thanking Benjamin and Lily for helping them afford treatments they had once feared were out of reach. Volunteers formed chapters in various states. Marcus Hale coordinated security and logistics for events, treating Lily as though she were his own little sister. Even Evelyn softened toward her, offering guidance with a dry, almost hidden warmth. For a while, Benjamin seemed stronger. He attended board meetings, spoke at fundraising dinners, and spent afternoons reviewing proposals with Lily seated beside him. But even as he pushed forward, Lily noticed the subtle signs, the moments when his breath shortened, the pauses he took mid-sentence, the way his hands trembled when he reached for a glass of water. No one needed to tell her his health was declining. She felt it in the quiet spaces between their conversations. One crisp November afternoon, she arrived at the penthouse to find the lights dimmed and the medical staff speaking in hushed tones. She hurried to Benjamin's room. He lay propped up against pillows, looking smaller than she had ever seen him. Yet, when he noticed her, his face brightened. "There you are," he whispered. "My favorite student." She moved to his side, taking his hand gently. "Are you hurting?" He shook his head. "Just tired. But I wanted to see you. There's something I've been meaning to give you." He nodded toward a small wooden box on the bedside table. Marcus handed it to her with a quiet, respectful nod before stepping back. Lily opened the box and found the scarf she had wrapped around Benjamin the night the wind was too cold for him to bear. "You kept this?" she asked. "I kept everything that mattered," he said. "That scarf was the first warm thing I'd felt in years." She lifted it carefully, fingertips brushing the familiar fabric now clean and neatly folded. "I want you to have it," he continued. "Not because I need it anymore, but because I want you to remember something." He waited until she met his eyes. "You fed me when I was starving for more than food. You gave me hope at a time when I had none. And hope is a powerful inheritance." Her eyes filled with tears and she leaned closer, holding his hand with both of hers. "You changed my life," she whispered. "You changed mine first." Over the next few days, Lily stayed by his side for as long as the nurses allowed. She read to him from the books he had once recommended. She updated him on foundation projects. She told him about her mother's progress about school, about the future she was beginning to imagine. He listened with soft smiles, absorbing every detail. Late one evening, after the sky outside the windows had turned a deep shade of blue, he asked everyone to leave the room except Lily. She climbed into the chair beside him, the scarf wrapped around her shoulders. "Lily," he said softly, "I won't be here much longer." She shook her head quickly. "Don't say that." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not afraid. I've lived more lives than most people ever dream of. But if these are my last days, I want you to understand something important." He waited, catching his breath. "Legacy is not measured by wealth, not by buildings or awards or the noise people make when they talk about you. Legacy is measured by the hands you hold, the lives you touch, the moments when someone feels less alone because you chose to care." His eyes glistened and his voice grew faint. "You gave me more legacy than any business I ever built." She rested her forehead against his arm. "I don't know how to do all of this without you." "You won't be doing it without me," he whispered. I'll be in every act of kindness you choose. You will carry forward what matters because that's who you are." That night, Benjamin Wells passed peacefully, Lily's hand still wrapped in his. His memorial drew people from every corner of the country: leaders in technology, former employees, families. The foundation helped strangers who had been moved by the story of a billionaire found by a little girl's kindness. Speakers told stories of his brilliance, his innovations, his influence. But the room fell utterly still when Lily stepped up to the podium. She spoke with the quiet strength he had taught her. "He believed I saved him," she said, voice trembling. "But he saved me too, not with money, but with faith. Faith that kindness matters. Faith that even someone small can make a difference." After the memorial, Lily and her mother dedicated themselves fully to the foundation. Lily grew into her role, steadily guided by the values Benjamin instilled. As the years passed, she visited shelters, hospitals, and community centers across Seattle, carrying meals in her scarf-wrapped arms, continuing the cycle that had begun so simply, so humbly, under a cracked lamppost at Pike Place Market. One winter evening, long after Benjamin's passing, she spotted a young boy sitting alone outside a shelter. His clothes were thin, his hands shaking in the cold. Without hesitation, she sat beside him and placed a warm meal in his lap. "You should eat it while it's still warm," she said. The boy looked up, eyes wide with surprise. And in that moment the world came full circle. For kindness, once given, never truly ends. It becomes legacy. It becomes hope. It becomes the quiet, extraordinary truth that shaped the girl who fed a poor old beggar every day until the day he revealed he was a billionaire and changed her life forever. The story of Lily Carter and Benjamin Wells is at its core a testament to how an ordinary act of kindness can intersect with a life that appears completely different on the surface. Lily, a 10-year-old girl carrying burdens far heavier than her age should allow, chose compassion at a moment when it would have been easier to avert her eyes. She lived each day in quiet struggle, caring for her sick mother, stretching every dollar, and learning too early that life could be unkind. Yet, despite the challenges, she offered warmth, food, and dignity to a stranger the world had written off as invisible. Benjamin, hidden behind the facade of a homeless man, had spent years detached from a world he no longer trusted. His wealth, fame, and influence once defined him, but grief and betrayal stripped his life down to its loneliest truth. Money could buy comfort, but it could not buy sincerity. In Lily, he found something rare, giving without expectation. She reminded him that human goodness still existed, even in the smallest and most unexpected places. Their friendship bridged two worlds that should never have touched, yet needed each other profoundly. Through their connection, both lives transformed. Lily gained stability, hope, and the presence of a mentor who believed in her potential more fiercely than she ever believed in herself. Benjamin regained purpose, dignity, and the will to return to a world he had abandoned. Together, they built a legacy, the Wells Carter Foundation, born not from fortune, but from the shared understanding that empathy heals in ways medicine and money cannot. Benjamin's passing did not end the story. It deepened it. His teachings live on in Lily's hands, in her choices, and in the countless families the foundation now lifts from despair. And Lily, once a child struggling merely to get through each day, now carries forward a mission rooted in love, humility, and memory. Her journey reminds us that every act of kindness echoes further than we can ever predict. The lesson from their story is simple, but timeless compassion is not measured by what we give, but by how willing we are to see the humanity in those we overlook. In a world that moves quickly and often forgets its most vulnerable choosing, kindness is an act of courage. When we slow down, when we share, listen, or offer a hand, we create ripples that may change someone's life, and in turn, change our own. Anyone can start small. Anyone can be the reason someone feels seen. Anyone can ignite hope. If this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of the power we each hold, please subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to keep creating meaningful stories and to keep spreading the message that kindness still matters.